Okay. And so wanted to get feelings from you on what you think homeopathy is. We'll just go around the room. Marsha, what do you think homeopathy is? What exactly is homeopathy? What are those little sugar pills that don't seem to contain any medicine at all? Anyone
I think it's like distilled and filtered down of whatever the substance is, and it's supposed to provoke some kind of a reaction. That's what I think it is. I don't know.
Yeah. Valerie, any thoughts on what homeopathy is, how it works?
Yeah, kind of what Marcia said, but I think there's something to do with resonance and energy, because there's it works so differently than anything else I've ever done.
Yeah. It's the opposite of anything you've ever seen, because it's based on the laws of similars. Oh, I gave it away. I was going to go down the room. Lee, what is your thought on what homeopathy is or might be?
Well, believe it or not, you just stole my answer. I was going to say like cures light with minute concentrations that are biologically active.
Yeah. Ellen Marie.
So homeopathy to me is just, taking natural substances to the body, and that's all I know about it.
Okay. Melissa.
My understanding is it's I would call vibrational medicine. So it's sort of like the essence or the vibration of the thing interacting with the vibration and essence and energy in your own body or in the illness. And the greater the distillation, the more potent the vibration.
Oh, that's everyone's got very, very good thoughts on what homeopathy is. Marlene.
I was going to say like treats like.
Yes, absolutely. And that is where it is so different. That is where it is so different than any other form of medicine. But I'm not going to give it away. Arzu, what do you think homeopathy is? You've used it some, but not a lot.
Actually, I've never used it.
You've never used it. Okay.
I've only used herbs. I understand herbs.
Okay. What do you think homeopathy might be?
I have heard people say when you take homeopathy, you're getting some of whatever it is your body is going through, you get some of that. Whatever it is, you're getting some of that in order to get better.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. But the fundamental underpinning, Jen, you can't speak, right? And Mary Beth, you can't speak either unless you'd like to. Got a chance. Okay. So all of you are very, very right in that homeopathy is dynamic, it is energetic, it is based on resonance, but the fundamental way in which homeopathy is very different than everything else you've ever seen is that it respects the human body. If you, Marsha, had a rip-roaring fever of 104, that was your body's adaptive mechanism. It was your body's adaptive response to stress, to the illness, and that is how the body was kicking it out. And homeopathy recognizes that a fever is a very therapeutic thing. Homeopathy recognizes that the pain that I have in my back right now from doing too much gardening is a very therapeutic thing, because when you have fever, your immune system, your tumor necrotic factors, your immune system revs up. Hyperpyrexia causes everything protected in your body to rise, for the white blood cells to go up, your lymphocytes to go up, and your immune system becomes much more potentized. And why do we have systems of medicine that take that fever that is so curative and try and tamp it down? What you're then doing is something that is the opposite of what your body is trying to do to you. Here's your body trying to raise a fever, and there you are trying to take the fever down. The fundamental principle of homeopathy is a respect for everything that Mother Nature does. Respect for every single procedure that your body goes through. When you vomit, when you puke, when you have loose stools, when you break out into a rash, when you have high fever, those are your body's ways and mechanisms of getting that substance, that illness, that bug, that microbe out of your body in the most efficient way possible. And how does homeopathy help in that? Can anyone take a guess? How does the body assist how does homeopathy assist the body in doing what it's already doing really, really well to get better faster? Anyone take a guess?
I will. It feels like plant magic to me. I always just feel the more I'm getting to know plants, they talk to me in the garden anyway. And I think the homeopathy kind of worked that way too, because it couldn't have just been lucky guesses so often. There is some kind of an incredible energetic thing that goes on. I do not understand it, but I love it.
Yes, and it works, and it works. So it works. What you're saying is it works on the principle of similarity. You know, when you have a fever, something that causes that fever speaks to you. And when you take that something which actually causes a fever in real life, or causes you to have hyperpyrexia, or causes you to have nausea, if you take a tiny, 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 tiny dose, a dose that is so tiny that it has gone past Avogadro's number, past 10 to the power of 23, and there's not a molecule of that substance, but as you dilute it, you're succussing it, you're shaking it vigorously every time, to the point where some of the energetics, some of the principles of that substance are dynamized into that remedy, and somehow it seems to reduce the intensity of your illness. It seems to cure your illness faster. It seems to make you better faster. It seems to curtail mortality. It is not reducing necessarily, the purpose is not necessarily to reduce your fever. The purpose is to make you well, if you follow me. And we'll go,
could I say one thing that I heard that I thought was interesting? You know, with allopathic medicine, we're so used to anti-everything, antibiotics, antidepressants, you know, etc., analgesics, antipyretics, and that the difference with homeopathy is through this process that you just described, that it uproots the illness and it assists your body in uprooting the illness. It doesn't suppress the illness, so it can do more damage and show up another day. That was helpful for me to hear that definition.
Absolutely, absolutely. All homeopathy is doing is saying yay to the body. Homeopathy is saying what you're doing is the very right thing, body, with your reaction to whether it's COVID or typhoid or cholera or a wound or an injury. And what homeopathy is doing is assisting. And this is so different than every other principle of medicine, and so simple. And it's so gentle, and it is so effective. It has never made money, but it has had tremendous success for the last 250 plus years with people who have understood the power and the brilliance of homeopathy. Someone needs to mute. Someone's doing dishes, guys. All right, so we go to the next one. It was founded, or it was discovered by a very learned person by the name of Samuel Hahnemann, born in the mid 1700s, and he was a fantastically brilliant physician. He knew 7 languages. University of Leipzig. He graduated with flying colors, and he started practicing medicine of the day. And what he saw was bloodletting. What else did he see? He saw mercurialism. He saw cutting and chopping that resulted in death of patients. And he did it over and over. And then he said, this kind of medicine is not medicine, it's butchery. Most of my patients are dying. They're not getting better. I can take those days, syphilis, gonorrhea, a lot of these infectious diseases were very, very rampant. And for these, they were letting their blood out. There was this theory that if you salivated a lot, then you would get the miasm out of your body. So they gave people mercury, which is one of the most poisonous molecules in the world, in large doses. And these people would start salivating, and the next thing you know, the patient would be dead. And so Hahnemann looked at this form of, but it had a huge effect because momentarily, temporarily, their ulcers or their tumors reduced in size, and the physicians could make a big brouhaha, charge big bucks, show how it went down a little bit, and let go of the patient after they'd collected a lot of money, and the patient would go out and get something called tertiary syphilis, which was the effects of the medicine. So Hahnemann said, I'm not going to do it. He had a gaggle of like a dozen children or something, 9 children or something, and he refused to practice medicine. He started doing translations. Hahnemann started doing translation, and that's how he made money. They were very impoverished. They lived in the town of Meissen in Germany. And one day he was translating the essays of a guy who was talking about quinine as a cure for malaria. And he was saying quinine cures malaria. And quinine cures malaria because it is bitter. And that bitterness attacks the malarial. They didn't know about the malarial parasite, paramecium. And they, you know, he said, and the essay said, it's bitter, and that is the medicinal value of quinine. So Hahnemann didn't believe that. He was skeptical. He said, why should something bitter work in a disease? So he decided to try the very first and the most brilliant experiment in all of history. See, he did everything with proving, with controlled trials. These were the earliest randomized controlled trials. He said, I'm gonna take myself, a healthy person, and I'm gonna give myself quinine. And he gave himself quinine. And can anyone guess what happened when he gave himself quinine to a healthy person?
He got the disease.
Yes, 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 yes. Let's stop for a moment here. You give yourself quinine, you get the disease. You give yourself a poison and you start retching, you start getting diarrhea. And he said, holy smokes, I am getting the exact same symptoms as malaria. I've got the fevers, the intermittent fevers, I've got the chills, it's periodic, it comes, it goes. What does this mean? This means that quinine in a very, very low dose seems to be curative because it acts as if it is the disease. In fact, it superimposes itself on the body as a greater disease of the same sort as malaria, so that the body intensifies all its actions that it was already making, and thereby goes in the right direction and heals itself. Are you following this logic? If you have cancer, you give yourself something in a homeopathic form or a very minuscule form that gives you the same disease, and your body manages to deal with that disease in itself. And it's kind of sort of like the concept of vaccines, except it does not have the ingredients, the poisonous ingredients of vaccines. It does not have the unreliability of vaccines. It is not injected. It does not bypass your immune system. It is ingested. And so you will see in this, on the Capitol, they made a statue of Hahnemann 100 years ago. At the bottom of this, it says similia similibus curantur, like cures like. For a moment, wrap yourself around this. How many times have you taken a child with 104 fever and given it Tylenol? It is absolutely, completely the wrong thing to do. By suppressing the fever, you have driven the disease down deeper. How many times for a gastric, a diarrhea, or a dysentery or something, you've given, or a UTI, you've given someone an antibiotic, or you've taken an antibiotic and regretted it because the next thing you knew, you got infection after infection after infection that needed more and more and more antibiotics. And in the end, you had cystitis, meaning there's no reason, your bladder is just inflamed and you're forever in pain. And anyone experience those things? I was admitted to a hospital when I got the dengue fever in Malaysia. And unbeknownst to me, they poured ciprofloxacin, which is a very poisonous, toxic antibiotic into me. This is for a viral disease. I don't know why they did it, but I didn't know. And after that, I had sinusitis, bronchitis, this itis, that itis for about 8 to 12 months continuously. And as a person that had never, ever before fallen sick. And the antibiotics just wrecked my system. So when you do something that suppresses your body's reactions, you're doing something very, very damaging. And that is why homeopathy is the most wonderful medicine for children. My grandson has grown up on homeopathy. His fevers last for like a half hour to 2 hours. He manages to give us adults all his diseases. He's sick for like 2 hours and is playing. His mother's sick for like 2-3 days, and then she's good. And if I get sick, I get sick for a week. But it's remarkable that if you keep the immune system in the condition that it was meant to be, and if you give it medicine that shores up the work of the immune system, how remarkably resilient you become in life.
Sushma, I have a question since you mentioned cipro.
Yes, please.
So I was given cipro, unfortunately, and ever since then I've had joint pains. It's been a very long time, and I wonder if there's an antidote to cipro of some kind of homeopathy, because
Yes.
I've tried so many things.
It destroys your joints. It
Boy.
destroys your gut. It destroys so many. It takes time. It can be healed, and it's a combination of homeopathy and diet. Absolutely.
Okay.
And one of the very good remedies for any kind of drug-induced poisoning of your body is nux vomica.
Oh.
Nux vomica.
Yeah.
Take it for a few days on, few days off, 3 times a day, 30C, and it'll antidote the effect of drugs that have suppressed or, tamped down your system. And specifically, joint remedies are excellent. So everyone, so let me ask one of the persons that has never used homeopathy before, Arzu, this is a study group. Did you follow it? And tell me what's your thought on what homeopathy is the similia similibus curantur principle.
I think, like I mentioned, I had heard people who take homeopathy tell me or explain it to me as you get some of whatever your body is going through, you give it that same, they said it like, give the poison back to the body and the body knows what to do, is how it was explained to me. So that's what cures like.
Exactly.
Translates to that.
And how does that, folks, we need a discussion here. How does that translate into our everyday actions? Say you have an injury. Or
you're asking me?
Anybody, if anyone has an answer. Injury or fever or cough or cold. What do we tend to take?
Suppressants.
Anti-inflammatories.
Yeah. We take Benadryls, we take cough syrups, we take steroids, we take antibiotics, we take fever reducers. All of these are going to drive the disease deeper. There's a Sugimura studies that says all the children who had a flu and were given paracetamol, which is a fever reducer, landed in hospital with pneumonia. So what the body is doing is the immune system cannot work to heal. And so therefore it takes that much longer for it to heal. And as it takes that much longer in that sickened condition, the body is getting sicker and you'll end up in hospital with pneumonia. The elderly who are given doses and doses of antibiotics for their minor thing land in hospital with pneumonia and have to be ventilated and so forth. And so every system, the system of medicine that we currently have in place is very, very suppressive. The ventilator killed 80% of the people that died from COVID need not have died. They died not from COVID, they died from the treatment. The ventilators, massive doses of antibiotics for a disease that nobody even knows, but was definitely not a bacterial disease, steroids, and so on and so forth. The death rate was phenomenally high, and only 5 or 6 or 7% of those people need have died had we not done what we did with the treatment. I had close to 100 people that I gave out remedies to for COVID. Nobody died. No one's disease went very serious. Every single symptom of long COVID that they had, afterwards, depression, whether it's heart palpitations, whether it's weakness in your limbs, whether it's vertigo, all of that, there are homeopathic treatments that are excellent. And not only are they excellent, they're gentle. They don't kill you. And that's the principle of similia similibus curantur. At some point, we'll look through materia medicas and how a repertory works. But this dude was a super smart guy, super smart guy. And we owe him a debt of gratitude for giving us something in today's world where ERs are closed off to us. Hospitals are off limits to us. Hospitals today are past their golden age. We're not in the golden age of hospitals anymore. Hospitals are where people go to get killed. I have had relatives go to hospitals, get killed, and it's tragic. It's tragic. People who would not have died otherwise.
So Shuman, can I make a comment? I don't know if you saw this when it came out, but the Institute of Medicine, the IOM, was looking at all causes of mortality, and I think someone made them stop reporting these statistics in the last decade or so. But in the last maybe it was a decade ago, deaths in hospitals due to accidents from wrong medications, falls, whatever, were I think the third leading cause of death after heart disease and cancer. So that's I concur with what you're saying.
Yeah, it's probably the leading cause, and today it is the largest cause of death treatment. So before you grab that bottle of something to get yourself out of temporary pain, think a little bit. Your body's actually doing you a huge favor. And that's a very different way of looking. It's a way of honoring your pain. It's a way of honoring your fever. When you get a rip-roaring fever, cancers go into complete remission. Your body is so smart. That's what the Coley's fluids were. Back in the day when there was no chemo or radiation, this guy used to give bacterial illnesses to his cancer patients, and they would get well because they got these rip-roaring fevers. Their immune system of cancer patients would be revved up and their cancers would be gone. And so you need to understand that the only thing that'll work is your body's immune system. Any questions? All right. So Mr. Hahnemann, Samuel Hahnemann, the most brilliant, I would say, he's the founder of a medicinal path, was born April 10th, 1755, lived to a ripe old age, went from Meissen to France, and continued to write. He continued to write. He wrote of his experiments. He actually randomized controlled trials. The concept of double-blind trials came out of homeopathy. The first director, head of the FDA, was a homeopath. The guy who invented the X-ray. So many of these learned people were homeopaths. And the method of science was true science, was actually discovered under the rigorous tutelage of Hahnemann. So this Hahnemann started his life in a time when mercury was used. And what is today's mercury? What is today's arsenic and bloodletting? Can anyone guess?
Dentistry for sure.
Yep.
And today's arsenic is our rice, right?
Yeah, our rice, but the medicine we're giving.
Chemo,
radiation, cutting, burning, poisoning. We are forgetting that a tumor is not a condition of that little spot over there. A tumor is a condition of the body. We're losing sight, or we're conveniently neglecting the fact that the tumor came out of our body. So back in his days, there was mercury for syphilis, there was arsenic for psoriasis, there was bloodletting to heal people, and there was horrific bleeding and horrific deaths, and doctors just killed off pregnant women who went to hospital to deliver babies because they were going from one bleeding womb without washing hands. So there was much harm done in medicine of that era, and we think we've gotten better. We have actually gotten worse. We're not curing cancer. We're not even managing cancer. We're continuing to kill people with chemo and radiation. And so because our treatments are so suppressive, one small fix, you get a cough, you suppress it with Benadryl or something, it goes away, it comes back 20 days later, it's much more virulent. This time you start to get a little bit of shortness of breath, and so now you get steroids, and then just to be safe, your doctor gives you antibiotics. And so the next time, a month later, it comes out with twice as much force, and before you know it, you've got raging asthma. And so Hahnemann thought about these suppressive treatments, and under his philosophy, he had a hypothesis that similar is what will cure. And then he tested it. He tested it when scarlet fever raged through Europe and killed 30–40% of the people. He discovered that the similimum, you'll hear the word similimum. Can you say the word similimum? Just say it.
Similimum.
Similimum. He was looking for the similimum for the symptoms of scarlet fever, which is a red rash, high fever. It comes out in a certain pattern. And he discovered that belladonna, which is the deadly nightshade, belladonna, the beautiful lady, is a similimum for scarlet fever. And he took a little bit of the crushed substance of that plant. He diluted it to the point of nothingness. And he literally went around Meissen, door to door, and gave people a teaspoon, every family member a teaspoon of belladonna when scarlet fever was raging. No casualties in his city. Everywhere else, it was 40% mortality.
Wow.
Yeah. And that has been the case in the leptospirosis epidemic in Cuba, through typhoid epidemics, cholera epidemics, when the mainstream doctors were doing mercury, arsenic, bloodletting, all sorts of terrible potions that were just killing people, he was having stunning results. And so the then establishment tried to push him down, but it was common man's medicine. And folks, it needs to become common man's medicine, because the FDA is trying to take away homeopathy and our rights to homeopathic remedies. And so the rule of first do no harm and the law of similars is the fundamental underpinning of homeopathy. Any questions? Questions, thoughts, comments?
Well, he sounds like a smart guy.
He's a very smart guy. Yeah. And very courageous, because he was flying in the face of everything everybody was saying. And even today, people think of it as voodoo medicine. But let me tell you this, the COVID per million death rate in the United States is 2,250 or thereabouts per million. In India, it is some 300 people per million have died. Massive difference in a country that is poverty-stricken. 400 million people in India use homeopathy because that culture has not died down. The culture of homeopathy, people are very, very poor. They have trusted their physicians for generations. So there are homeopaths in India who are 5th-generation homeopaths who have led this COVID epidemic with no deaths among their flock, whereas there have been massive deaths in the people that went into hospitals and got, steroids and antibiotics and vented and so on. And this should teach us. What has happened in the last couple of years should be a lesson for us. So how does the curative process work? It works from the inside out, above to below, and the symptom regression happens with the last cured first and the oldest last. And sometimes you see repeats of the old symptoms and you know that the cure is happening. That is the general set of laws that were derived from the similia similibus curantur principle. The body heals from the inside out. If you have a big cancer on your hand, on your arm, a homeopath is going to treat you from the inside, your mind, your spirit, and the cancer will sort of handle itself. inside out, above to below. Your body is trying to protect your mind, which is, and your soul, your heart, located somewhere here, which is what provides you with the life force. If anyone has seen a person on their deathbed, you see how they were enervated 1 second, and then the next moment, the life force leaves them, and you can see it. Anyone have experiences of people dying in front of them?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. What was it like? Tell me.
Well, it was kind of long and drawn out because my mother had given my dad some pretty heavy narcotics. So it's kind of hard to say what a natural death would look like. I don't really know.
Anyone else?
It was similar for me also. It was my mother. She was also in the hospital, you know, on morphine, painkillers toward the end. But the very last seconds, you know, the eyes opened and there was this.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the breath stopped.
Yeah, yeah. And you could tell right away that she passed, right?
Yes.
There were no second guessing. There's no two ways about it. You can tell when a person is alive and when a person is dead. That life force.
Shuma, just one little story. I mean, obviously, I've been at the bedside of a lot of people that have died, including family members, but one stands out. A gentleman ruptured an aortic aneurysm, and he was not. They were not able to operate on him because it was so bad. If they had opened him up, he just would have bled out on the table. So they brought him to the intensive care unit, and I was just the lowly intern, and they had his bed tipped backwards, and so he was on all the maximal blood pressure medicines, but he could still talk. And he was kind of upside down, so the blood would keep going to his head. And so what was strange was watching the blood seep out of him. His feet went white, and then his calves, and then his thighs, and he was still talking to me. And anyway, it was quite something to be there.
Wow.
And but fortunately, we were able to, before he went out, he had asked for a priest, and we were able to get him there before he lost all his blood. But quite something.
Wow. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is instant. It is instantaneous when the life force leaves you. And that shows you it is not a bag of bones. Your body is not a bag of flesh and minerals and bones. There's something more that lights it up. And that dynamic is what we fail to address in any of our other modalities except for homeopathy. So symptom regression happens from, the curative process happens from above to below. The first thing that happens when a homeopathic remedy is working is, it's not that your symptoms disappear or the rash disappears, but you feel better. You get happier. You feel more at peace. Your brain feels better. And that's where it works down from. Latest first. So if you started with initially with something that was, like a rash, and then later on it turned into pustules, and then later on you got a headache, then later on you got a foot ache. The first symptoms that start to get better are the foot ache, then the headache, and then the rash will clear up. The last symptom will clear up the last. And this cure is not materialistic. The cure is non-materialistic. And that is the key thing. The body does these things in a way that is insanely complex and insanely intelligent. And we have not figured out the first of it yet, but we respect it. What Hahnemann said was, I don't have to understand everything. Remember back then, they didn't know about microbes. They didn't know about viruses, bacteria. They called them miasms. They had all these weird words. He said, just want to see empirically what works and what doesn't work. And what I'm finding is that the more I dilute the remedy, the more I succuss it, the more powerful it becomes. And so the cure here is non-materialistic. I'm not giving them stuff. I'm giving them the dynamic energy of whatever it is, the substance that is a simillimum to whatever they're suffering from. And the thesis is, and this is from the Organon of Medicine. So what he did was he wrote a set of principles, and he said, I'm going to test these principles with these medicines. And if they work, then they're going to be part of a book called the Organon. And the Organon, he wrote many, many editions all the way from the first to the sixth edition over the 80 years of his life. And these were the guiding principles for homeopathy. And every one of them is proven. Every one of them has actual empirical evidence. And that's how it became an aphorism, what is called an aphorism in the Organon. Every error in life produces its proportionate diminution of the vital force. Can anyone take a guess what it means? Your body is meant to do certain things. Your body is meant to be treated in a certain way. You say you do things. You give it a lot of steroids. Every time something swells up, you give it steroids. Your body is trying to swell up, and you're giving it steroids. Every time you get an infection, your body is trying to heal in a different way by pooping, by vomiting. You're giving it suppressive things to stop the vomiting, antiemetics, anti-diarrheal drugs, and you're retaining that poison inside the body. Every time you do this, every error in life produces a reduction in your vital force, until every vaccine you take, every vaccine has 250 milligrams of aluminum. You give it to a child that's 24 months old that does not have an immune system yet, it's going to cause a diminution in its vital force. And to bring back that life force, you have to take away the effect of the error. The instance is this pole here is crooked, and something breaks here because it's crooked. The wires are broken. You can't keep fixing the wires until you have straightened this pole out, guys. You follow that?
Mhm.
And that's what it means, that until you address the underpinnings of your life force that cause the diminution, it's gonna cause damage to you, or continue to damage you, or continue to not heal. Another principle is something sort of knocks the life force down. It expresses itself in symptoms. Like I was gardening, and suppose that if I was gardening, or someone was, playing tennis or something, and you got this expression of the symptom. When you apply a similar disease in a minimum dose, so if you apply to this knee here that you're seeing a substance that causes very similar symptoms, what the life force is sensing is those symptoms in a small dose, and it reacts very rapidly to it, and then it attacks the symptom of the injury to your knee with a great big response, and what was dragging on for 5, 10, 20 weeks suddenly heals. I've seen dramatic recoveries in people with back problems, with knee problems, that were just going on and on. They were on these aspirins and NSAIDs and steroids, and it kept breaking. For one thing, those are poisonous, not in and of themselves. They actually destroy your connective tissue, a lot of the treatments. And you're suppressing the pain, you're suppressing the symptoms, you're suppressing the redness, and pretty soon you have a knee that's beyond repair. And at which point you simply replace it, but that's not the answer, replacing the knee. If you apply a disease of a similar sort in a minimum dose, you're curing that joint much farther, much better, much faster, and from the inside out. And so homeopathy is not a medicine that heals. Homeopathy is a medicine that helps the body heal itself. Mm-hmm. It is always your body that's got to heal itself. It's not medicine. Homeopathy is the simillimum, kind of like a stick that's being applied to the body to help the body understand, yeah, that's the illness. This is a typeface of the illness. Go do what you would do to this.
What's that word you used?
Simillimum.
Simillimum. Could you write that in the chat or somebody? I never heard that.
Yeah, it is called simillimum. And how do I chat? Chat. Yeah, here.
Thank you.
Similimum. There.
Thank you.
And that is the principle of the similimum. And people are very scared of it. The reason I'm going on and on about it is people are scared of it because you're not used to it. Every time a child comes running to you, you go, mommy's heart says, make the pain go away. No, 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 no. You sit there and you observe the child. Is he dying? Is the little mite dying? What's his fever like? And you give him a similimum. If he's throbbing, if his face is bright red, if his fever went from from nothing to 105 suddenly, and his eyes are dilated, his pupils are dilated, that's a belladonna fever. Mm-hmm. 1 dose of belladonna and my grandson's fever comes down in like a couple of hours. We thought this kid was was on the way to having convulsions. In 2 hours he's playing, all is well with us. Miraculous and dramatic results, but only if you've been doing it and the body's accustomed to it and the body's not knocked down like so. So start your children early, teach people early, and avoid the traps, avoid the pitfalls of antibiotics, steroids, vaccines, chemo, radiation. These are not curative medicine, period. Points of cure. The homeopathic remedy replaces natural disease. So do you sort of get it that what you're doing is you're showing the body a mirror. Body, this is a mirror of what you're suffering from. Take a look at it. This is a tiny problem. How would you resolve it? The body says, yeah, I know. I'll have a high fever, I'll puke, I'll have diarrhea, and I'll respond in a certain way. And it does. And that is what replaces the natural disease. It overtunes, meaning you've heard of resonance, right? Like the time someone mentioned it's resonance, and it is indeed resonance. It's like the soprano who can crack a glass with her voice with resonance. So it's like the disease has a certain resonance, the medicine has the same resonance, and it crashes up against this resonance and causes the body to respond to the disease in the appropriate fashion, as if a healthy person were to respond to that disease. So it overtunes the natural disease. In the process, removes the sensation of the disease in the life force and takes away that disease from the life force. And so the organism is now suffering from a temporary medicinal disease. So if my grandson has a belladonna fever and I give him belladonna, his fever gets superimposed with the belladonna fever, right? Which is the disease of the medicine, and the life force can easily overcome it because this is very dilute. This is very gentle. This is a very, very tiny, minuscule dose. And so in overcoming the medicinal disease, the body overcomes the bigger disease. And you don't die from scarlet fever by the means of this medicine. Does that make sense? Can anyone explain to me in a nutshell, in your own words? Who wants to take a shot at it? Anybody at all?
It's such a paradox, Sushma. It's hard to, I think I have to think about it a little bit, or maybe more than a little bit.
Yes, yes.
Everything,
yeah.
I can't take a shot yet, but what I'm thinking is like when I was sick, I took an antibiotic and steroids and an aspirin so I wouldn't get blood clot. I did the whole Western medicine supplemented by, I do have some homeopathic remedies that I was taking, but I can't imagine what it would have been like if I didn't take some of these things. It's scary because yes. I'm on the precipice of like, am I going to be able to breathe?
Yeah. Yes.
How do I stay out of the hospital? It was very, very scary.
Yes. Yes. Well, guess what? The vast majority of the Indians who got some pretty terrible COVID were treated by homeopaths not only was there very little mortality, there were very few long-term effects of post-COVID. The entire course of the disease got changed. It became from something that slammed them, something very virulent, to something that met its natural medicine, that overtuned the disease, took over the disease and crushed it in a very short time. And it takes a leap of faith to do that. And I was scared when in Paris, I couldn't breathe, my chest, I felt like there's a snake around my chest. And I go to the homeopath and she goes, yeah, if this doesn't get better in 3 days, you got to go to a hospital. I said, no, I'm not going to go to a hospital. One dose of phosphorus, 1N, and the snake around my chest unwound itself, and I could breathe. I could take a deep breath. And so until an acute hits, it's very hard to even trust something like this, because you'd get freaked out. People would say, what the hell are you doing? You're doing nothing. You're treating this with steroids and antibiotics when you're at your deathbed. And of course, there's something to be said for steroids and antibiotics if you're really and truly dying. But for COVID, in my view, the ideal medicine has been homeopathic medicine, and especially for the longer haul. So what it's basically doing is, what allopathic medicine here is doing is, it's suppressing it. So if your bronchioles are shut, right, from the COVID illness, it's trying to open them up with the aid of steroids. That's not what homeopathy is doing. Homeopathy is giving you the similimum that causes them to constrict further because of a trust and faith in the human body that it is doing what it's supposed to, and you give it the similimum, if you follow me. And at every stage, I could discuss a live person's disease. So in the first stage, the person has a severe sore throat. It starts to go down the nose and into the lungs, and you treat it with a similimum for that area. You get a snake around your chest. There's a bunch of different remedies. So in my case, phosphorus fix, the phosphorus it was, but it could be antimonium tartaricum or any one of these others. And then you have the diarrhea symptoms. You have these other symptoms. So what you're doing is you're taking those symptoms, you're creating a sort of a genus epidemicus of the disease, and you're treating it homeopathically. And you find that, yes, you're still tortured. It's not like you didn't get the disease. But number one, you don't die from it. Number two, the disease gets condensed into a much shorter period, and it's curative. And the remedies are curative because your body has done the healing. It was not suppressed.
It's very interesting. How do you relate sleep to this? The only reason I'm asking is that I know that sometimes when I feel sick in some way, if I can just get myself to sleep,
yes.
I know it's the relaxation is part of it, but is that related in any way? How would you relate it?
Absolutely. All your healing, all your restoration happens when you're asleep. And if you can sleep a disease off, there's nothing, that is your body telling you you're sick, go to bed, you take time off from work or whatever, and you just sleep. And frequently you need nothing more than sleep and some chicken soup. And so to my mind, the best medicine is food. Food is the best medicine, food and sleep and your good air. And then everything else you can cure with homeopathy.
Mm-hmm. Exercise too?
Exercise, yeah. These are called, these are so these are things that if you're not exercising, guys, homeopathy is not really going to help. If you're not eating the right foods, you can take remedies to feel better, get better, but that's called an obstacle to cure in homeopathy, which is there's fundamentally something wrong with the way you're living. If you're sleeping only a half hour every day, you're going to keep getting sick. And there is no homeopathic cure for, you not doing your habits being different than they need to be to have a healthy body. And so there's a difference between you got to think about what you use medicine for. Medicine is not a substitute for lifestyle. All right. Aphorism number 9. In health, the life force keeps all parts of the organism in harmony. At all times, when you put on weight, when you lose weight, there's a very good reason your body's doing it, and you want to respect that. When you're sick, you want to lie down. When you're sick, you have a fever, you want to honor that. When you ate a bad, watermelon or shellfish, you're puking, you want to honor that. You don't want to die from dehydration, but you do want to get the poisons out. If your throat has phlegm, that was the last stage of my COVID. The phlegm all came out, it became productive, and I knew I was going to get better. Those are all things the organism is doing to keep you in harmony. And that's the life force, the indescribable life force. Aphorism 10, the material organism functions solely by means of immaterial vesen, the life force. And at all times, he talks about the life force that supersedes, that's beyond the material organism. And you see that as we all discussed, when a person is about to die, they're still made of that same bag of bones and muscles and this and that, but somehow you see the life force leaving them, the vesen leaving them. And that is the force that you need to, at all times, in every way, whether spiritually, emotionally, physically, you're shoring up your life force. Because that's what'll make you vital. Homeopathy speaks to the terrain versus the germ. So the belief here is it's the life force. It's the life force that lets in bacteria or viruses or pustules or disease. And it's the life force that kicks them out. And it's the life force that you need to nourish and feed, and not the pustule. You don't need to treat the pustule. You need to treat the life force. If you had life force, you would never get the pustule. You would not have this, that, or the other problem. So the terrain is the dynamics, the life force, your immune system. Back then, he didn't know about immune system. So the immune system, talking about your immune system. You can choose to vaccinate the fish, or you can clean the tank. You have a choice. How many vaccines you're going to need to vaccinate the fish and keep them from dying? 20,000 vaccines in a dirty tank. Whereas if you had a clean tank, you would need 0 vaccines, 0 antibiotics, 0 steroids. And so the terrain is the ultimate determinant of health. And that's the life force. Different words. It's the terrain, not the germ. Aphorism number 11. In disease, the life force is first dynamically mistuned and then manifests its mistunement through symptoms. So your symptoms are actually a gift from God. Think of your symptoms as a gift from God. If I sat down and garden for 2 hours and my back hurts and I continued to garden, that would be a very, very bad thing. Any comments on this? Questions?
Yeah, it's that whole thing about just listening to your inner voice, or just paying attention to what's actually happening versus always pushing and ignoring what the reality is.
Yeah. And there's a time to just shut down. There's a time to just turn off the lights and get into bed, drink some chicken soup, eat some beet kvass, and there's a time to do and toil and moil. And essentially, if you honor your body and it is mistuned through its symptoms, you see that, you want to respect that. That's aphorism 11.
So Shema, can I ask a question? So for those of us who are now, in their late 50s, and I've had too numerous antibiotics to count. I've had the majority of the vaccines that can be given.
Mm-hmm.
Is there hope?
Yes. Yes.
Can you speak to that?
Yes. And there is hope because all of us have been through that, and all of us, a lot of us have recovered from it. The number one thing is to understand this, comprehend it, and eat it, apply it in our life. Not a single antibiotic, not a single steroid, not a single vaccine crosses your threshold this day, this second, and on. Every one of those are suppressive systems of medicine that are just going to mistune the tines of your fork more and more and more and more. And you're just gonna bifurcate from your life force. To bring your life force back into balance, you wanna honor that every single symptom, the pain you have, the migraines you get, the gut dysbiosis you have, and you don't just look at it and sit there and admire it. Of course, you're doing something about it with your diet, with homeopathic remedies that'll get you aligned and back into with physical treatments. All of these, acupuncture, all of these systems are medicine, are designed to be aligned to your life force and to go with your body. And then we have, but covered by insurance, is only suppressive medicine. Isn't that ironic? That suppressive medicine is a multi-billion-dollar industry. We get sucked into it because, gee, that's the only treatment we got available where someone else pays for it. We can't afford $80 for this massage or whatever, or $10 worth of remedies. So we go land in that hospital, and from then on, all the way to death, someone has squeezed us for $1.5 million, not us, our insurance companies and so on, and we're dead at the end of it.
Yeah.
I would say avoid hospitals, avoid ERs, avoid doctors, do a pantry clean out. And I offer to do that. Not many people have taken me up on that. I'll come to your house for free and clean out every one of your medicine cabinets. Every single, Benadryl, cough syrups, and paracetamols and Tylenols and the steroids, out hormones, everything, supplements, everything. You want to replace it with the true pharmacy, which is whatever you get from your farmer. Only eat the stuff you get from your farmer. Practice homeopathics. There's much hope. I was a wreck in 2005. Remember I told you I was in hospital. Someone admitted me to hospital. They pumped me full of cipro. My lungs are shot. My first drop of raw milk was like a golden elixir for me. Within 60 days, my asthma was gone. So food is medicine. Food is medicine. And if you have food in homeopathics, you don't need anything else. Unless you break a bone or in a traffic accident. Then you need trauma surgery. The manifestations of the disease reveal the whole same thing. No one has a question about this, right? So you get a migraine for a very good reason. There's something much deeper going on. And so you want to pay heed to it and address it. And the good thing about homeopathy is that it is curative. It's not like an aspirin where the headache goes away, but the fundamental problem is not addressed. Aphorism number 13, it's absurd to view disease as separate from the living organism. If you follow this, there's a little cancer, it grows and grows and grows and grows. And what do the doctors come and do? They snap it off here, they snip it off here, but look at what's going on behind. It's not separate from your body, it's part of your body. Cutting and chopping and surgically removing it ain't gonna fix the problem. Problem is fundamental to your life force, and you need to address that error in the dynamism of your life force. And once you do, it'll fix itself. The Banerjees, there's a clinic in India called the Banerjee Clinic, and for 150 years, for 5 generations, they've been keeping track of data, and now they have I think a 30,000 case database of cancer treatments, homeopathic cancer treatments. They are probably the place that has the highest success. They've worked with MD Anderson on brain cancers, glioblastomas, the Ruta and Calphos protocol, Ruta 6C, Calphos 3X. People who don't even know them all over the world have been taking people with glioblastomas, multiforme, the kind that there's very little you can do with radiation and cranial surgery and this and that. Getting better, complete remission, their tumors shrink dramatically. That's when they used to come to the clinic to say, what do I do next? Giant mammary cancers, uterine cancers, all of these, once you address problems of the life force, it returns itself. And it's absurd. Yeah, go ahead.
So where did you say that was? What was it called?
It is the Banerjee, Prasanta Banerjee Research Foundation in Calcutta. And it's been a bunch of homeopaths since the Hahnemann. Hahnemann sent missionaries in the 1750s, German Christian missionaries from Germany went to India, taught a Maharaj or cured a Maharaja of some dreadful disease. And he became such a passionate advocate of homeopathy that he taught the locals. And one of these guys was the ancestor of the Banerjees. And for 150 years, they've been practicing nothing but homeopathic medicine. People come from far and wide. They see 1,200 patients every single day, a group of 10 doctors. It's awesome. Half the practices for free, half the practices with fees. But the point here is, it is absurd to view your disease, your pimple, your nit as separate from yourself. Aphorism number 14, related to the vital force. Everything curably diseased makes itself known to the physician by signs and symptoms. It is very important. Everything that is curable but diseased makes itself, if your body shows a symptom, it can be cured. There's your hope. Who asked for hope? Lee. Everything curably diseased makes itself known to the physician by signs and symptoms. Aphorism 15, the life force in the material organism form, and it's so beautifully written. He wrote, he was a very precise writer. He wrote, he thought about it, he did multitudes of experiments, and he rewrote it. So by the time the last organon rolled around, he had a set of philosophies to hang his principles on, and they worked. And because they worked, people have been going to homeopaths for centuries. The life force and the material organism form an indivisible whole, as do the mistunement of the life force and the complex of perceptible symptoms. What does that mean? Anyone take a guess? Take a guess.
Well, I think what it says is that when you're the life force and the material organism form an indivisible whole. So when you're in tune with the flow and you're paying attention to what you need to do, things are working. But when you come out of tunement or you're in mistunement, then you start to have symptoms of the mistunement. So maybe you get up and you're drinking coffee instead of drinking water, or there's all the millions of things that we do where we're not paying attention, and then we become, I would say, misattuned or something. I don't know, mistuned.
Yeah, mistuned. Exactly. The life force is indivisible from the body. Your life force enervates you. It lights you up. It's like the energy, the light bulb. There's the light bulb, and the light bulb is lit up, and it's part of one and the same. And when the life force is knocked out, the light bulb kind of stops and starts, And that's the complex of perceptibles. And what you see are the symptoms. So it's very valuable to have symptoms, folks. When you feel sad, when you feel joyful, when you are in pain, those are all symptoms of your life force being either disarranged or well arranged. You know, there are these times in your life when you just feel content. You just feel so happy. You feel so happy to be alive. You're not in pain. You know, the sky is blue, the air is fresh. You've got a good meal in your belly. You're sitting there with your loved ones. That's your vital force in good action. And aphorism number 16, disease only occurs and can only be cured through dynamic impingement upon the life force. And there again is the principle of impingement. Here's your life force, and you impinge a homeopathic remedy, finger for finger, identical, similia, similibus, curantor, like will cure like. And once you impinge it upon that condition, your body says, oh, shoot, I figured out what it is, because in its mild form, I know what this problem is. And the body attacks the bigger problem. And that's the best he could express it. He did not know immunology. He did not know the principle of immunotherapies, which is what vaccines are supposed to be, but are really not, because you're injecting a whole bunch of other crap into the body. And you're injecting it. You're bypassing the immune system in doing so. Whereas what the immune system is doing is, it is tasting a little bit of that COVID or typhoid or cholera through your saliva, and your terrain is good, your life force is strong, and it can then take it, one part of the immune system, the innate and the adaptive immune system, right? Two types of immune system. The innate immune system figures it out, what it is, and then your adaptive immune system has antibody systems and other arms that will figure it out for future reference, and has a library of diseases that it has fixed before and now knows how to deal with them. That complex science Hahnemann did not know. All he saw was that if you take a like substance, dilute it greatly, make it completely non-poisonous, it is as if the body's immune system is getting programmed with a tiny non-fatal dose of that thing to cure the bigger problem. How clever was he back in the day?
Really clever.
Yeah. Aphorism 17, the only thing the physician has to do to remove the entire disease is take away the entire symptom. And so this speaks to treating the body, not the disease. Remember, homeopathy is all about treating the body, not the disease. And that sort of goes for the acutes too. I mean, there are certain injuries that are cured best by the person's constitutional treatment, you know? But Hahnemann also acknowledges that at times when, like the COVID epidemic, when something on the outside takes over, it takes over the life force. And at that time, you can use the same remedy for every one of these people who are suffering from this disease, like scarlet fever. It became an epidemic, and the force of this disease, whatever it was, overtook many, many life forces. And then you have this thing called the genus epidemicus, which is the same homeopathic treatment will work for all people, as opposed to different treatments for different people, because they're so different, because the disease takes over the life force of the organism. And we've found that for COVID, a certain set of remedies have worked exceptionally well. It's not any one thing, but it's a set of remedies that have worked for the respiratory symptoms, the bleeding symptoms, the neuralgia, the nerve symptoms, the diarrheic symptoms, the respiratory symptoms. And so, but in general, what the doctors or the homeopathic physician's job, or the mom's job, or if you have pets and your dog is not well, your job is to take away not just the itch. Your job is to take away the entire complex of symptoms that are plaguing your animal, your child, your spouse, your aunt, your uncle, your grandma, your patient.
So in a way, are you saying, so like the thing with COVID or whatever kind of plague or whatever we're talking about, it's almost like it takes over a mental process in the population in
Yes.
a way,
Yes.
and produces symptoms. And is that why you're able to use one thing in particular to treat it? Because in a way we are acting like the population is acting like one organism.
Exactly. Exactly. You hit it. Exactly what's going on. And it may not have started out that way, but when panic hits a certain point, everybody sort of coalesces and becomes one. Everybody's symptoms kind of coalesce. And it's almost as if 7 billion bodies become one body. And so in any epidemic, certain remedies have worked very well. Of course, you're looking at the symptoms, you're repertorizing. We will go through something called materia medica and repertory in the next 2 sessions, which will be a lot of actual practicing. How do we look at these? These are highfalutin. You might think these are highfalutin, but these are fundamental to not panicking. What happens when people are faced with their routine diseases is they panic because they don't know. They never knew about homeopathy. They don't know what the hell it is. The similia, simillimum, curantur sounds like woo-woo or voodoo. And what if I die? So that is why your underpinnings or your belief systems need to be based on understanding why this modality of medicine works, as opposed to symptom suppression. Symptom suppression will never work. I guarantee it'll never work.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a cancer, you first surgically incise it. It can pop right back up. Then you irradiate it. So you now burnt the surrounding area where the cells are mutating into new forms of cancer. You've hit the life force. Now the life force cannot operate with full impunity. And so you get knock-on cancers from the radiation 10 years down the road. The doctors are telling you, oh, but we saved you from dying today. No, they didn't. The only time I can see there's a reason to get rid of a cancer is if it's herniated, if it's affecting your ability to either breathe or eat or poop or, like the alimentary canal cancers. But homeopathy has had wonderful results with all tumor types of cancers, lymphatic cancers, leukemias, glioblastomas, things that spread with wonderful, wonderful results. The problem is people panic, and then all of a sudden they'll suddenly veer away and go do this one thing. They come back, and it's very difficult to revitalize a vital force that's literally been irradiated to death. And that's why we are belaboring the fact of the vital force. We're belaboring the fact of the simillimum. The totality of symptoms and circumstances, this is Aphorism 18, is each individual case of disease must be the sole indicator in selecting the remedy. So you look at the system complex, you might have had diarrhea and shortness of breath. I might have had shortness of breath and huge amounts of cough and headaches and very neuralgic symptoms. So that's like a symptom complex. And you look at that symptom complex and you say, gee, Marsha, you've got this type of COVID, Valerie, you got this, Marlene, you got this type of COVID, or whatever it is, the plague or whatever it is. And based upon that, you select a remedy that covers most of these or all of these symptoms, mental, physical, spiritual, organ, and that is going to lead you to the best result.
So we would all get a different kind of medicine?
Yeah.
Based on our symptoms.
Exactly. So for you, it was a different set of symptoms than for me. And for Marsha, it would be a very different set of remedies based on her symptoms. But when you get to an epidemic or pandemic like this, where the whole world has sort of the similar sort of a disease, there's a set of remedies that have come up through the ranks that are really good remedies. So there's Rustos, if there's severe migraines or severe encephalopathic, you've got brain swelling, you've got heart pain, you've got clotting, bleeding. A wonderful combination is Rustox and Arnica. And perhaps if in the early periods of the disease, of the illness, you had taken those, Marcia, it might have relieved the intensity of the disease, where you would not be at the point where now you can't breathe down the road. And so as you treat the totality of symptoms at any given point, you sort of cycle through the remedies, and it never gets to the point of mortality or even close. And when you don't get intensely sick, you don't have intense after effects. You don't have intense long COVID. You don't, you feel a little fatigue, and you can handle those. You can treat those as well, gently and powerfully.
Sushma, in a way,
Mm-hmm.
when I'm reflecting on this now, I feel like a lot of the symptoms of COVID are extreme panic.
Yes, yes, yes. That's the biggest, that is the biggest symptom. And you know what the remedy for that is? Aconitum and arsenicum. When you feel you're dying, take an arsenicum. If you're panicking, if absolutely your heart is pounding, what the hell was it that I got? Aconite. It can literally abort the disease.
Yeah.
And so it is now 8:30, and I wanted to stop recording and give us time to sort of commune together, if you don't mind, for 5 minutes. Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah.
Okay.
I want you to fall asleep this early.
Okay.